Hello, everyone out there. Hello, I hope you're having a wonderful day. This is my day number 2 on going live on YouTube. I'm going to try to do it every day at 1 o'clock. I think I'm running a little bit late. Oh, I'm right on time, but I have to say I am not very prepared today. My day's been pretty busy. I didn't have time to get all cleaned up and makeup on, so I went to the gym this morning and here I am. I had a kind of relaxed day. I wanted to get more prepared though, and I just didn't have time. So yesterday I started talking about building on my series on moving forward with Dr. Mom. I talked about the 3 principles that I'm going to use that I basically base my life on, that have helped me move forward in my life and get to better places. So that's what I'm talking about. So the first principle is building a strong foundation and how important it is. And so yesterday I was talking about how the biblical translation of building your foundation on rock. So your foundation or your house, how in the Bible it says to build it on rock instead of sand, and we talked about Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, and kind of what was going on during that period of time. It was pretty rocky back then. It was pretty rough. They were going through a lot, and so Matthew's talking about how important it is, but I also found there was 97 other places in the Bible that it talks about how important it is to build a steady foundation. And for me, I'm a Christian, and God is my foundation. Parts of it, I broke it up into 3 tiers. So I believe principle number 1 in helping you to move forward in your life, or even just to be strong on a daily basis. Principle number 1 is building a strong foundation. Number 2 is goal setting, and 3 is working on professional development constantly. That's always helped me. It's helped me immensely to get where I'm at and just to move forward on a daily basis. So I decided to go ahead and talk today about, I wanted to look a little more about the history of what Matthew, and it was the year 70 and what he was going through, what was he writing on and all of those things, but I didn't have time to get more into that. So I'm going to go ahead. I used 3 analogies. One of it was the biblical translation of building your house on solid ground, on a rock. And we talked about how one lady, let me see if I can find it. So Kimberly Taylor wrote this very interesting article on 3 things that help you build a strong foundation. And it's wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And when we talked about wisdom, we talked about it being the cornerstone of your house. And in this case, how it holds the house together. So, and then the understanding was like the support beams in the roof. And then the knowledge was the furnishings. So the furnishing that makes it blingy, right? And so that's the 3 things we were talking about yesterday. And really, it's all about, we talk about those structural things, but it's all about yourself. And what am I doing to build? Because honestly, there's a lot of things that happen in this life, right? And so how do I make that solid foundation? How do I build it? How do I have wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, right? So how do I gain those things? And we talk a lot about, studying different things, meditation, studying the Bible, studying other people that are positive and help you to find, a way to make a solid foundation. There's just so many things that you can do to study and have wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So, but the other analogy I really like, and I've always really wanted to study, was skyscrapers and how they're made, and because I feel like that's a solid foundation. I mean, don't you all often look at a huge building and wonder how it stands in place? And how important it is for the architects to design it so it can withstand many things. So using this skyscraper that's going, how many, I guess the tallest one is 163 floors in Dubai, it looks like. How do they construct it that high? And it probably takes a long time even to design it, right? And if they do that, why are we not doing the same thing in our lives? Why are we not putting tons of effort into making our foundation so incredibly strong that we can withstand anything? And so that's why I kind of like the analogy of a skyscraper. And I thought it would be kind of fun to study up on. And so I found 5 fun facts about skyscrapers that I think is kind of fun. And I think it was for kids, but I guess I must really like things like that. So this is what I found. So I guess they have an actual skyscraper day on September 3rd. That they celebrate huge buildings that stretch towards the clouds in cities around the world. So the first skyscraper was actually built in 1885, and it reached 10 stories high. Today, skyscrapers can top over 100 floors, which is incredible to me. I mean, that's crazy. Let's see. Now, I don't know if I've ever felt a skyscraper sway when I was up in the middle of it. Maybe I thought I did, but I guess they do actually sway. So the tallest skyscraper is in Dubai, it looks like, which is 163 floors. And you could actually feel the building swaying, which would be scary to me. I mean, that's like how elevators are when you're up in them and then you're done riding them. You're kind of going, "Oh, I'm still moving," right? So because it's swaying doesn't mean the building's unsafe. Okay, so they say all tall structures are bound to sway a little bit in the wind, but builders have to be sure there's super strong winds. Don't topple a skyscraper. Thank you. Thank you for that. So the concrete that's used to make these tall buildings is strengthened with steel rods and beams. And that's what I was trying to think of yesterday when I was talking about houses and how here where I live, sometimes there's tornadoes, and so you want a basement, and so I think it's called rebar. That's what I was trying to think of. That's the steel rods. The beams, the steel beams, are what are often built in larger buildings or skyscrapers, and so they use those to reinforce it. And so think of all the work and money that's going into this building to make it strong so it can withstand the wind and rain and tornadoes and whatever might come along. So if they're putting all this money and time into it, we have to make sure that we do that with ourselves. Put a lot of money in, well, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. Study, put a lot into your building your foundation to make it strong so that it can withstand the world, right? So for a skyscraper to be stable, it must be built on a strong foundation. The part of the building that's found in the ground is called the substructure. It supports the entire skyscraper and keeps it standing tall and strong. So thinking about that, what would be our substructure? Excuse me, as a human being, what would be our substructure? Would it be our soul? Would it be our spirituality? Would it be our family? Would it be the time that we put in? Or would it be when we were a child growing up? So how important it is for parents to provide that early development, early substructure. So I would think so. Maybe the soul. How much are we putting into building and strengthening our spirit and soul and being nourished? Make sure we can withstand many elements, right? So workers must blast into the bedrock. So the bedrock is a layer under the soil. So they actually blast into the bedrock, the solid rock found deep beneath the soil, to build the sturdy base of the skyscraper. The part of the skyscraper that you see above ground is known as a superstructure. So I thought this was interesting too, is that elevators are a must-have in a skyscraper. It's fair to say that the invention of the elevator in 1852 led to buildings getting taller and taller. So I find that interesting, paving the way for today's skyscrapers. Elevators make up the core of the building, which means that architects pay close attention to their placement when designing a skyscraper. So that's super interesting. Super interesting. As for the fastest elevator in the world, it's found in a building in Shanghai and can transport passengers from the basement, yikes, to the 119th floor in 53 seconds flat. Wow. Ooh, I don't know. That would be kind of a rush. It's sort of like the bullet train in Japan that goes over 200 miles an hour. It's pretty awesome, but kind of scary at the same time. Okay, so this is something I didn't really know. Bugs have a lot to teach us about buildings. And what mound termites, which live in Africa, South Asia, and Australia, build mounds that are covered in tiny holes. These holes allow fresh air to enter and cool down the structure. So now architects are studying the termites' design skills to create a skyscraper with a ventilation system that'll work like the walls of a termite mound. Isn't that interesting? And when I heard of that, I think about the translation, well, in the Bible, where it tells us as human beings to watch how ants build and how steady they are. They're on this, they work together as a team, and they constantly gather food and build for their family, right? They're constantly out. So I believe it's something about we should work like an ant. You know, they're constantly working, constantly. And then the other thing I thought about if we're looking at bugs, I don't know, is a spider a bug? I don't know if they're considered a bug. But I did this when I was in school, and I think it was speech. I did a speech. I always have to have something that's interesting to me, and I did a speech on a spider web, and how I was amazed at how strong a spider's web is. I think one of my examples was that if it happened, a spider web could actually stop a 747 in midair. That's how strong they are, and how Kevlar vests are made of spider webs, and how the military studies how the spider web is designed. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as a skyscraper. So that's very interesting. So before it was used to design a huge building, the skyscraper was a term for a triangular cell on a ship. So that's interesting, huh? I'm trying to figure out, maybe because it was tall. I'm not sure how that works together. So a skyscraper, a tall building, and then a mast on a ship, but I'm not sure. But it has other meanings, including a large horse, a very tall man, and a big hat. So it must be things that are very tall, right? So I thought that was pretty interesting. There's also some other things that I read up on the buildings. So they can be designed to withstand the most severe weather conditions. And I think nowadays they've really come a long way, right, from when they first started. They're getting taller. Let's see. So it says severe weather conditions including snowstorms, hurricanes, and earthquakes. Prefab buildings use high grade, commercial quality, 26 grade premium steel that is resistant to rust and other forms of weather damage. They are constructed using techniques that make them more durable and stronger than conventional constructed buildings. Pre-engineered are also resistant to other forms of damage, including termites and salt corrosion. This resistance allows metal buildings to retain a high degree of structural integrity over time. Because of the effects of the storms like Hurricane Katrina has led engineers to design steel buildings with a high degree of wind resistance. Studies have shown that the junctures of walls and the edges of the roof are areas most likely to fail under conditions of extreme wind. As a result, today's structure designs provide extra reinforcement in these critical areas. Most buildings can be engineered to resist hurricane damage and can withstand wind forces up to 170 miles per hour. Oh, I thought this was interesting too. So a Quonset building, often the buildings that farmers use to put grain in, I believe is what we're talking about. They have the best high-speed wind resistance of any building due to their curved and wind-resistant form. So if you live in a hurricane zone, then a Quonset hut structure would definitely serve you very well. So let me see if there's anything. So when buildings first began to grow taller in the 1890s and 1900s, height limits were imposed, such as those introduced in Chicago to prevent their masses from blocking sunlight. In New York City, ordinances were passed that allowed tall buildings to develop on the basis that they were set back after reaching a certain height. Yeah, I mean, that's in tall cities, it's hard to see out, right, with the buildings really tall. So this allowed sunlight to reach street level whilst breaking up the facade and reducing impact that winds had on these early towers. Early skyscrapers used setbacks allow sunlight to reach street level and to reduce the street canyon effect. In the 1960s, however, larger box-like skyscrapers began to come to prevalence, bringing with them a host of wind load engineering challenges. Gosh, it's very interesting. So the first problem began to rise was increased wind velocity at street level. This was principally caused by the street canyon phenomenon, an effect that sees large buildings redirect wind down their facades, which effectively act like canyon walls and funnel it along streets as much higher velocity than in low-rise suburban areas. Gosh, that's very interesting. I never realized that had such an effect. The street canyon effect was particularly notable in Manhattan, where the heavily formulous grid structure of the city blocks offered little to break up and deflect winds once they began to blow. Additionally, as winds moved around the top of these tall structures, vortices were being created in a process known as vortex shedding. When the wind hits an obstacle like a square building, the flow separates at the corners. I never realized that there was so much involved, or the evolution of the buildings now. Can you imagine? When the wind hits an obstacle like a square building, the flow separates at the corners, creating vortices and a low flow wake region. This flow development results in pressure that creates unsteady loads in HTE cross flow and wind direction. Gosh, that's very interesting. This process, much like water flowing down a stream, acts differently on obstacles depending on how streamlined they are. In case of these buildings, their sheer block walls create a bluff obstacle that wind has to flow around. As strong winds moved around these structures, areas of low pressure merged on the opposite side of them, creating suction forces that pulled at the buildings, causing them to sway back and forth. So while such movements may initially be minimal, high winds can create vortices that can match the frequency of the building they are moving around, causing noticeably swaying and shaking motions for those inside. That's scary. This phenomenon led engineers to begin testing models of tall buildings and wind tunnels at design stage, assessing the potential impact of high winds on structure before they are constructed. By doing this, project teams were able to develop innovative approaches to managing wind loads, reducing their impact on tall buildings and enable them to rise even higher. So the solution, the first and by far simplest way to reduce impact on high winds on tall buildings, is with an approach called corner softening. Corner softening sees sharp edges smoothed off of the structure to make it more aerodynamic, or small cutouts created in the edges of a structure to scramble prevailing winds and reduce the strength of vortices they create. Wow, that's very interesting. I guess an example was in Taiwan, where relatively minor cutouts on the building's corner reduced movement as much as 25%. That's is super interesting, but I mean, I'm thinking, I'm trying to match it with what I'm talking about and how important a foundation is in your own life. And so look at all the work that's gone into skyscrapers and foundations, and all the money and time and engineers and studying. So, it's just shows how freaking important it is for ourselves, just as a human being, how important it is to invest the time, invest the time it takes to build your spirituality and your foundation, and your foundation, which a lot has to do with spirituality, family, and professional development. How important that is. And, how important it is to gain wisdom, understanding, and knowledge so that we can have a strong foundation. So I'm just kind of rambling today. I'm going to have to make sure I do more studying for tomorrow. But I'm just doing a follow-up. I wanted to study a little bit. How important it is for how much work they put into building a skyscraper, and how much time and energy and money they do, and how important it is for us as a human being to do the same thing. And so I want to look more into the root system of a tree too. That's my 3 analogies is, building your house on rock instead of sand. Kitty, okay. How I liken it to a skyscraper and how much work goes into that, laying the foundation. And then also a tree, how a tree grows and how strong the root system is. So I didn't have much time to study today, but I did say I was going to go ahead and post a video every day, and this is it. But I need to do way more studying. I ran out of time. This is my first week on my own, and I'm not doing the best job at my time management. So I need to study much more before I come on here and present. So for today, I think this is going to be it. Everybody have a tremendous day. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off for today and say, Ja mata mata ne. I love all of you, and you have a wonderful day.